What if your greatest power was in the moment you chose not to react? In a world constantly poking at your nerves, where outrage is applauded and speed is everything, what would it mean to simply pause and hold your ground? There is a quiet, almost invisible kind of strength, one that lives in the space between what happens to us and how we choose to respond. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's transformative. Today, we're stepping into that space. The ancient Stoics believed that we are not disturbed by events themselves, but by our interpretations of those events. And yet, how often do we hand over our inner peace to the chaos around us? To a careless word, a delay, a rejection, a rude driver, a friend who didn't text back. But real freedom, real power doesn't come from trying to control life. It comes from mastering our response to life. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending to be unbothered. It's about owning the moment before the reaction, because in that tiny gap lies your calm, your clarity, your self-control, and that, right there, is your power. So if you're someone who's tired of feeling hijacked by every trigger, stay with me. Like this episode, share it with someone you care about, and let's walk this path together. A journey into the art of not reacting, one practiced for centuries, yet needed now more than ever. Understanding your emotional triggers, every emotional outburst, every sharp reaction, it isn't random. It's a messenger, and like all messengers, it carries a story. Sometimes that story isn't even about what just happened. It's about what happened long ago, a forgotten wound, a hidden fear, something buried beneath layers of survival, a voice from the past, disguised as the emotion you feel now. Think back to the last time you overreacted. Maybe someone criticized your idea, and without warning, anger erupted, or someone brushed you off, and the sting felt far heavier than the moment deserved. Why? Because beneath that moment lives memory. Maybe it was the childhood moment when no one listened, the betrayal that taught you to guard your pride, the silence you endured, the tears you swallowed. These are your emotional triggers, the silent scripts we carry, the unseen authors of our reactions. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And those judgments, they come from our most formative moments, deep, often unconscious impressions that shape our lives. To gain emotional mastery, we must stop seeing our reactions as isolated outbursts and begin seeing them as clues to a deeper structure within us. And this work begins with awareness, not blame, not shame, just honest observation. When a strong emotion rises, pause. Ask yourself, what am I really reacting to? Is it just this situation or something older, deeper? Notice your patterns. Does criticism cut deeper than it should? Does being excluded reopen an old ache? These aren't weaknesses. They're invitations, opportunities to know yourself more deeply. Self-awareness is the first bridge from being controlled by your emotions to gently, firmly commanding them. Imagine walking into a pitch-dark room filled with obstacles. You'll trip over everything unless you flip on the light. That light is awareness, and once it's on, you can finally navigate with grace. So, turn it on. The power lies in your hands, and this is just the beginning. Once you turn on the light of awareness, you begin to move through life with purpose, not stumbling through old wounds, but stepping forward with clarity. You no longer waste time blaming the darkness. You simply learn to navigate it with wisdom. And here lies a quiet but profound Stoic truth. It's not about erasing every emotional trigger. It's about seeing them clearly so they can no longer control you. Epictetus reminded us that events themselves are neutral. What gives them weight, what makes them painful or overwhelming is our interpretation, our attachment, our past. So, when you begin to trace the origins of your emotional triggers, you're taking the first real step toward neutrality, toward freedom. But let's be honest, this isn't a transformation that happens overnight. This is the work of a lifetime. It's the steady, daily practice of observing your reactions, reflecting on them, and offering yourself compassion. Some days, you'll catch the trigger before it explodes. Other days, you won't. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Because each small moment of awareness, each time you pause and ask yourself why, is a quiet victory. Each insight becomes a brick in the foundation of your emotional strength. So ask yourself often, where did this reaction come from? Is it truly about what's happening now? Or is it the echo of an old story I've carried too long? And with time, the emotional waves that once knocked you flat, those tidal surges of anger, hurt, or panic begin to lose their strength. You become steadier, not because the sea is calmer, but because you've become the anchor. Understanding your emotional triggers doesn't mean becoming numb or distant. Quite the opposite. It means becoming free. Free to feel without being hijacked. Free to respond with intention. Free to live without the invisible burdens of a past that no longer defines you. This is where the quiet revolution begins, not with fireworks, but with inner stillness. With the soft, powerful act of simply noticing. Noticing the body, your emotional alarm system, before the mind can even form a thought. The body has already spoken. Before you say, I'm angry, or I'm anxious, your body is whispering. It through a rapid heartbeat, a tight chest, tense shoulders, or a breath you didn't know you were holding. The body is our first emotional responder. And if you learn to listen, truly listen, it becomes your most loyal ally in emotional mastery. But let's face it, most of us live disconnected from our bodies. We rush through our days, lost in thought, barely noticing the quiet sensations that rise and fall within us. Yet every feeling has a fingerprint, a physical signature. Anger might stiffen your jaw. Anxiety might flutter in your stomach. Sadness might settle like weight in your chest. These are not meaningless sensations. They are early alarms, gentle at first, louder if ignored. Their purpose, to bring you back to yourself. The Stoics didn't often speak directly about the body, but their wisdom was rooted in self-awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote often of watching his mind from a distance, observing thoughts, not reacting to them. Today, we know that true observation doesn't begin just in the mind. It begins in the body, the very birthplace of emotion. When you begin to notice these signals early, you reclaim the sacred pause, the space between trigger and response. Instead of being swept away by jealousy, fear, or frustration, you feel the first ripple and say to yourself, something's happening. And that awareness, it changes everything. Once you learn to tune into your body's signals, something remarkable happens. You begin to recognize emotion as it rises. And in that recognition, a door quietly opens. It's the door where choice lives, where you're no longer at the mercy of automatic reactions, but fully aware, fully present, and active participant in your own experience. When a situation stirs something in you, anger, fear, shame, train yourself to pause and turn inward first. Before the sharp words leave your lips, before the shutdown begins, Just breathe. Feel the tension rising in your chest. Feel the heat building in your shoulders. And instead of reacting, just for a moment, be still. You can even place a gentle hand over your heart and ask, what is my body trying to tell me, before my mind starts justifying it? This practice is called embodied awareness. Simple? Yes. Easy? No. It requires presence. It demands honesty. And it asks you to feel what's uncomfortable without flinching, without fleeing. You see, in many ways, the body is more honest than the mind. The mind can twist things, justify them, avoid them. But the body, it just tells the truth. If you feel threatened, your muscles tense. If you feel unseen, your breathing shortens. If you feel shame, your chest may cave inward. These aren't weaknesses. They're invitations to listen, to understand. And with understanding comes power. If you catch these signals early, you can step in. A few slow, conscious breaths can quiet the storm before it breaks. Relaxing your jaw, unclenching your fists, these are not small acts. They're signals to your nervous system. You are safe now. This is how you shift the momentum. Not by pretending the emotion isn't there, but by meeting it where it begins. Mastery doesn't mean you never feel big emotions. It means you learn to ride them instead of being pulled under. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And so much of that imagined suffering happens because we miss the body's early warning signs. We let our thoughts spin out without ever checking in on what's real right now, in this moment. But when you ground yourself in sensation, you slow everything down. You stop the spiral. You reclaim your ability to choose. Picture your body as an emotional radar system, a living compass that senses storms before they arrive. Each physical cue is an invitation to pause, to breathe, to respond from grounded wisdom instead of wounded reflex. And let's be clear, this is not avoidance. This is not repression. This is emotional maturity at its highest form. In time, this practice becomes part of you. You begin to move through the world with a new kind of calm, not hypersensitive, but deeply attuned. You'll feel anger flicker before it becomes rage. You'll notice anxiety tighten before it takes over. And because you notice, you can navigate. You'll choose calm over chaos, patience over impulsiveness, presence over panic. Noticing the body is not some trivial mindfulness tip. It's the very foundation of emotional control. Because if you can't feel what's happening within, you'll always be reacting to what's happening without. Learn to understand the signals of your body, and you begin to command the emotional storms of your life. When you begin to notice the body's emotional signals, you create space to pause, to breathe, to choose. And it is in this pause that true mastery quietly takes root. Mastery doesn't come from suppressing emotion or pretending it doesn't exist. It comes from making a conscious decision to respond, not react. And in a world that constantly rewards speed, fast decisions, quick comebacks, instant replies, that's a radical act. We're told to be sharp, to be quick, to strike back before we're struck. But wisdom? Wisdom waits. Wisdom listens. Wisdom takes its time. The Stoics knew this long before modern science confirmed it. Epictetus taught that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we judge and respond to it. That judgment, the inner voice that says, wait, look closer, lives in the pause. Without that pause, we're not free. We're just reacting like puppets yanked by the strings of circumstance. But let's be honest, creating that pause is not easy. Biologically, we are wired for survival. Fight, flight, freeze. When we feel threatened or embarrassed, when our pride gets bruised or our buttons are pushed, adrenaline surges. Our bodies prepare us for battle. What once saved us on the battlefield or in the wild now sabotages us in meetings, in relationships, in everyday conversations. In the modern world, survival no longer depends on brute strength. It depends on emotional restraint. So how do we build this sacred pause? It begins with something deceptively simple: a breath. When emotion rises, don't speak, don't act, just breathe. A slow, intentional breath breaks the chain of impulsivity. It sends a message to your nervous system. You are not under attack. You are safe. You have time. This tiny act buys you clarity. And with that breath, bring in reflection. Ask yourself quietly, what am I about to do? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it wise? These questions don't erase the emotion. They illuminate it. They let you see the feeling, not as a command you must obey, but as a message you're free to interpret or discard. At first, this will feel awkward, maybe even weak. You'll be tempted to fire back, to defend, to justify. But something powerful happens when you resist the urge. You discover a new kind of strength, the strength that cannot be provoked, the kind that remains steady even when the winds of anger or fear howl around you. Marcus Aurelius captured this with quiet brilliance. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't say you'll find silence. He didn't say you'll find weakness. He said you'll find strength. Strength lives in restraint. It's found in the quiet refusal to let passing emotions dictate your path. It's found in the rooted stillness that remains unshaken, no matter how loud the storm becomes. And let's be clear, this is not about being passive. It's not about becoming a doormat or staying silent when you should speak. It's about choosing your response with clarity, not chaos, from principle, not panic. Sometimes, after that pause, you will speak up. You'll set boundaries. You'll stand your ground. But you'll do it from a place of calm integrity, not emotional turbulence. Think of yourself like a musician. Every note you play matters, but so do the silences between those notes. Without the pause, the music becomes noise. Your life is the same. Every word you speak, every action you take, is part of a melody. You're composing a song of character, of dignity, of self-mastery. Let the pause be your rhythm. Let your breath be your conductor. And let wisdom be the instrument you play. Once you've learned to pause, to create space between emotion and reaction, you begin to unlock the deepest integrity of self-mastery. That sacred silence isn't empty. It's where clarity, choice, and power quietly gather. The pause isn't just a delay. It's not hesitation. It's the birthplace of intention. And when you train yourself gently, patiently to live within that pause, even for a moment, you begin to live differently. Start small. When someone's offhand comment stings, pause. When you make a mistake and shame whispers in your ear, pause. When pride urges you to snap back, to prove a point, pause. Even a single breath, a mere second of awareness, can shift everything. It can turn a confrontation into a conversation, a reaction into a reflection, a mistake into a moment of insight. And over time, that pause, it grows. What once felt nearly impossible, like stopping a train at full speed, becomes your new rhythm. You begin to live in sync with your values instead of your triggers. You're no longer a prisoner to every passing emotion. You become free. free to observe, free to choose, free to stay grounded even when the world around you is spinning in chaos. So protect this pause, nurture it, treat it as sacred, because in that tiny sliver of space between what happens and what you choose to do about it, you hold the key to an unshakable, resilient life. And that brings us to the next step, practicing mindfulness in daily life. We often picture mindfulness as something lofty or mystical, a practice for monks or seekers, reserved for mountain retreats or quiet moments on a meditation cushion. But the truth is far simpler and more powerful. Mindfulness is not an escape from daily life. It's a way of living it. It's not about rituals or silence or special surroundings. It's about presence, right here, right now. In every breath, every bite, every word. At its core, mindfulness is the art of returning again and again to this very moment. It's noticing life as it happens, instead of being lost in thoughts of what was or worries of what might be. The Stoics, though they never used the word mindfulness, practiced it deeply. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds himself over and over to stay with the task at hand, to be present, to act with full attention, no matter how ordinary the act. But how often do we drift? How many days pass in a fog of repetition, eating without tasting, listening without hearing, speaking without meaning? Life isn't rushing past us. We're simply not meeting it fully. To reclaim your mind and with it, your emotional control, you must first reclaim your attention. Start small. When you eat, just eat. Notice the textures, the smells, the flavor, the simple grace of nourishment. When you walk, just walk. Feel your feet meet the earth. Feel the air on your skin. Notice your breath. Let the world unfold around you. When you speak, speak with intention. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your full presence. Don't plan your reply, truly hear what the other person is saying. These small, seemingly ordinary acts, they hold extraordinary potential. Because mindfulness doesn't just calm your mind, it sharpens it. It helps you notice the first flicker of frustration before it turns into fire. It lets you feel the subtle rise of impatience, of fear, of pride before they take the wheel. You build, slowly but surely, a strong inner observer, a part of you that can see clearly, feel honestly, and still choose wisely. And that awareness? That's the foundation of everything. As we learned, mindfulness in everyday life begins with attention returning to the present moment, again and again. How do we keep that awareness alive amid the noise and pressure of modern life? It's easy to believe that mindfulness requires ideal conditions, quiet rooms, soft music, extra time. But that's a myth. You don't need more time. You need more presence. Mindfulness isn't something you add to your life. It's how you experience the life you already have. Washing the dishes can be mindfulness if you feel the warmth of the water, the rhythm of your breath. Answering an email can be mindfulness if you're truly engaged with your words instead of rushing to hit send. Even sitting in traffic can become mindfulness if you're there, observing your breath instead of drowning in irritation or restlessness. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." That is the heart of mindfulness. It's the ability to sit with the present moment, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because it's yours. Mindfulness is not about zoning out or becoming passive. It's not about escaping your responsibilities. It's about showing up fully to the life in front of you. When you're present, you're not weaker, you're stronger. Your focus sharpens, your actions become deliberate. Your words land with more weight because they're chosen with care. Your emotions lose their grip because you notice them as they arise, before they spiral out of control. So where does the path begin? Right here, with the smallest of choices. One breath fully felt. One meal eaten without screens. One conversation given your full, undivided attention. It doesn't take a retreat to start. It just takes a moment. Don't underestimate the power of these simple acts. Like drops of water slowly shaping stone, they build something lasting. Day by day, you'll feel it, your mind becoming clearer, your heart more grounded, your spirit more at ease. And when life's inevitable storms come, and they will come, mindfulness becomes your anchor. It won't stop the rain, but it will stop you from being swept away. It won't erase sorrow, anger, or confusion, but it will allow you to meet them not with panic, but with grace. Here lies the great secret, the peace you've been chasing, the strength you've been searching for, the clarity you thought was far away. It's all here, in this breath, in this step, in this very moment. Presence isn't just a practice, it's a homecoming. And once you've tasted it, you'll begin to wonder, why did I ever live any other way? Up next, we go deeper. Let's talk about the rare and powerful habit of cultivating deep self-awareness. Once we learn to be fully present in each moment, the next step is turning that presence inward to understand what truly lives beneath the surface of our minds. The Stoics believed that wisdom begins with deep introspection. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest minds of Stoic philosophy, reminded himself each morning of life's simple gifts: to wake, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Yet in the same breath, he also held a mirror up to his own thoughts. Page after page in meditations, he questioned his motives, examined his impulses, and quietly investigated the judgments forming inside his mind. But this wasn't self-criticism. It was something far more powerful: self-clarity. And without clarity, real freedom, emotional, mental, or spiritual, remains out of reach. So, how do we begin cultivating deep self-awareness? Start with one powerful habit: observation without judgment. Notice the thoughts passing through your mind, like clouds drifting across the sky. Observe your emotions. When anger rises, pause. Ask yourself, what sparked this? What story am I telling myself right now? When sadness lingers, don't push it away. Sit with it. Ask, where in my body does this sadness live? What expectation, what memory is feeding it? This practice isn't about fixing your emotions. It's about understanding them gently, curiously, like an astronomer studying the stars. You're not there to judge the sky, only to learn from its patterns. One of the most powerful tools on this journey, journaling, but not the kind filled with perfectly crafted sentences or wise-sounding reflections. Real journaling is raw, honest. It's the act of pouring your unfiltered mind onto the page. Write your fears, your frustrations, your hopes, your confusion, your quiet longings. Let the page become a mirror, because once a thought is written down, it becomes visible. And what is visible can be understood. And what is understood can be transformed. But let's be honest, true self-awareness also demands courage. It's easy to see where others have hurt us. Much harder to notice when we're clinging to our own narrative of being the victim. Easy to feel justified in our anger. Much harder to admit when our pride or fear has clouded our judgment. And yet, this is the path. Deep self-awareness is not about shaming yourself. It's about looking inward with radical honesty and saying, this, too, is part of me. And because I see it, I'm no longer bound by it. Seneca once said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. In the same way, no one is more adrift than the person who never turns inward. Without self-awareness, we become like ships without rudders, tossed by every emotion, every storm. But when you begin to understand yourself, your strengths, your patterns, your triggers, you take the wheel. You begin to steer your life with intention instead of reaction. Self-awareness isn't a destination. It's a daily discipline. Some days, you'll observe your emotions with clarity. Other days, you'll stumble, fall back into old habits, miss the signs. That's part of the work. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. And slowly, with each honest moment of reflection, something beautiful happens. You develop compassion, first for yourself, then for others. You begin to recognize that everyone around you is carrying unseen burdens, fighting invisible battles. You judge less, you understand more. And that quiet understanding changes everything: how you speak, how you listen, how you walk through the world. Because there's a deep serenity that comes from knowing yourself not as a persona, but as you truly are. And that serenity, that's where your strength begins. When you begin to understand yourself fully, both your light and your shadow, you create a foundation of inner steadiness. No outside praise can inflate you. No criticism can break you. You become anchored in something far deeper, the quiet, unshakable truth of who you are. But to stay rooted in that inner truth, you must take the next step, learning to label and accept your emotions. Because let's be honest, how can you hope to master something if you can't even name it? Emotions are like waves. They rise, they crash, they recede. And if you don't know what wave you're riding, you're more likely to be swept away by it, dragged into words or actions that you later regret. This is why emotional control doesn't begin with discipline. It begins with something simpler, but far harder: emotional literacy. The ability to recognize what you're feeling, to call it by its true name, to sit with it not in panic, not in judgment, but in presence. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But many of us were never taught this. We were told anger is wrong, that sadness means weakness, that fear makes us failures. So we pushed those feelings down. We buried them. We pretended they weren't there. But here's the truth: suppression is not control, and denial is not mastery. What we push away doesn't disappear, it only grows stronger in the shadows. Even the Stoics, often misunderstood as emotionless, never encouraged emotional avoidance. They didn't run from emotions, they studied them. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And in that same spirit, we could say, no one is more vulnerable than the person who refuses to face their inner world. Because real strength doesn't come from pretending you're untouched. It comes from seeing clearly how you are touched and choosing your response from that clarity. Labeling your emotions is the first act of that strength. It's not about fixing. It's not about hiding. It's about honesty. It's about courage. You pause and say, this is anger. This is envy. This is grief. This is fear. You don't need to act on it. You don't need to drown in it. You just need to see it. And in that act of naming, something powerful happens. You shift from being inside the storm to observing the storm. From being the emotion to being the one witnessing the emotion. That small shift changes everything. Because now there's space. Space to breathe, space to choose, space to respond from wisdom, not from a blind reflex. But naming alone is not enough. The next essential step is acceptance. And let's be clear, acceptance does not mean resignation. It doesn't mean you're fine with how you feel or that you approve of every emotion. It simply means this: what is present is present. To deny the anger, the jealousy, or the anxiety doesn't make it vanish. It just pushes it deeper underground where it gains power in silence. Acceptance allows you to stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, you start working with it. Because the truth is, to be human is to feel. We all do. The strong feel. The wise feel. The disciplined feel. No one is immune to the emotional storms of life. But the difference is in what happens next. Do you resist and react? Or do you name, accept, and choose? That's what emotional mastery begins to look like. So the next time a feeling rises, ask yourself not how to escape it, but what it is trying to say. Then label it, accept it, and in doing so, reclaim your power. Because freedom isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to meet your emotions without being ruled by them. Once you learn to name and accept your emotions, you begin to move through life with a quiet steadiness. And just like the weather, emotions shift, they pass through, change form, and eventually clear. What matters is how you choose to move through them. Think of emotions as weather patterns. Some days bring warmth and calm. Others arrive with thunderclouds and chaos. But you don't stand in the rain shouting at the sky, demanding the storm stop. You don't try to control the rain, you adapt. You find shelter. You wait for it to pass. Emotions work the same way. Acceptance gives you the grace to move through emotional storms without losing your footing. Marcus Aurelius, ever grounded in reality, didn't see hardship as a personal injustice. He saw it as part of life. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That includes emotions. You may not control what initially rises inside you, but you absolutely control what you choose to do with it. And that control, it begins the moment you recognize and accept what you're feeling. That moment of awareness, that's where your power lives. This practice isn't about perfection. It's about humility. The humility to admit that we are not always composed, not always wise, not always at our best. Some days we are moved by fear, other times by envy, desire, grief, all within the span of a single morning. But there's also dignity in that admission. Because the moment you stop fighting your emotions and start witnessing them without judgment, you take your power back. You're no longer a puppet controlled by unseen emotions. You become a conscious participant in your own inner world. So how do you start? Begin gently. You don't have to analyze every feeling to pieces. You simply name it. This is sadness. This is anger. This is hope. You don't need to invite it in for dinner. You just need to greet it at the door. Like an old visitor. You acknowledge it, then allow it to pass through in its own time. Because here's the truth. Emotions are not permanent. They are temporary guests. They come and go, like seasons, like tides. Your role is not to freeze them in place or wage war against them. Your role is to feel them without becoming them. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you feel less. It means you feel with clarity, with maturity, with choice. It means you can feel anger without lashing out. You can feel fear without shrinking away. You can feel sorrow without being swallowed by it. Label, accept, breathe, Choose. This is the quiet, unglamorous, but deeply powerful path to emotional freedom. When you learn to label and accept your emotions, you reclaim your power. But there's another layer of mastery, learning to question the stories those emotions whisper into your mind. So many of our emotional struggles aren't just about what happens to us. They're about how we interpret what happens. Our thoughts create meaning, and often, that meaning distorts reality. Imagine this. A friend cancels on you last minute. Before you even breathe, your mind jumps in. They don't care. I'm not important. I'm always the one being ignored. Sound familiar? But pause for a moment. Is that the only possible explanation? Could there be another reason? Maybe they had an emergency. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe their decision had nothing to do with your worth at all. This is the power of reframing. It doesn't erase what happened, it simply opens a door to new meaning, a door to choice. Reframing isn't about sugarcoating life with naive optimism. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about mental flexibility, about training your mind to pause, question, and shift. Because the first thought that shows up when you're hurt or angry is often the loudest, but rarely the wisest. Start small. Start by noticing when you catch yourself spiraling. Pause. Name the thought clearly. I'm thinking I'm not good enough because I made a mistake. I'm thinking this one rejection defines who I am. That simple act of naming already weakens its grip. Why? Because thoughts thrive in the dark. The moment you bring them into the light of awareness, you begin to take their power back. Then gently challenge it. Ask, is this 100% true? Is this the only way to look at this? What would someone wiser than me see here? Do you really believe that one mistake defines your entire worth? That one failure predicts your whole future? That one person's opinion rewrites your identity? The Stoics would smile knowingly at this point. They taught that events are neutral, our interpretations give them power. It's not what happens to you, Epictetus said, but how you react to it that matters. Reframing also invites something even more powerful than optimism: neutrality. Not every event needs to be labeled as good or bad. Sometimes things just are raw moments. Data, material for growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "This is neither good nor bad. It simply is." And in that neutrality, you find incredible peace. Over time, reframing becomes a quiet habit. A habit of choosing better thoughts. A habit of giving yourself compassion instead of condemnation. A habit of interpreting mistakes as lessons, not verdicts. This doesn't mean pain disappears. Life will still test you. You'll still fall. But reframing allows those falls to teach, not define. The pain becomes something you pass through, not something you become. And yes, it takes daily effort. Some days, reframing will feel natural. Other days, the old stories will shout louder than truth. But every time you pause, every time you question, every time you choose a perspective that empowers rather than weakens, you are rewiring your mind toward freedom. Reframing is an act of emotional sovereignty. It's how you reclaim authorship over your inner life. It's how you stop being a passive character in your own mind and become the one holding the pen. So ask yourself often, what else could this mean? What's the kindest, most honest way to view this? What would my wiser self say right now? In those questions, negativity loosens its grip, and you make space for clarity, for peace, and for strength that lasts. When we learn to reframe our thoughts, we gain power over our internal world. But to truly live with clarity and strength, We must extend that same grace outward and inward through the practice of empathy and compassion. True strength is often misunderstood. We're taught sometimes subtly, sometimes loudly, that to be strong means to be invulnerable, to never flinch, to stay untouched. That building emotional walls somehow makes us resilient. But the deepest kind of strength doesn't come from shutting out the world. It comes from staying open to it. It lives in the quiet, steady courage to feel with others, to respond not with judgment, but with presence. That's what empathy is, stepping outside of your own story long enough to glimpse someone else's. And compassion, that's choosing to meet what you see with kindness. Though empathy and compassion may appear to flow outward, they always begin within. To practice empathy for others means recognizing a simple but powerful truth. Everyone you meet is carrying something unseen. The coldness of a friend, the sharp words of a stranger, even the betrayal of someone you trusted. These behaviors are rarely rooted in pure malice. More often, they stem from unresolved pain, unmet needs, or quiet fears. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't deny that harm exists, but they cautioned against letting anger govern us. Marcus Aurelius offered himself this wisdom. Whenever you're about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize? Empathy doesn't mean ignoring harm. It doesn't mean letting go of boundaries or making excuses for cruelty. What it does mean is softening the harsh edges of your judgments, not for their sake, but for your own peace. You begin to say, yes, this hurt, but maybe it came from their own unhealed place. You start to understand that someone else's pain doesn't need to dictate your worth. Empathy is not about becoming a sponge for others' emotions. It's about becoming an observer, a steady presence. You see anger without absorbing it. You notice fear without catching it. And in doing so, you anchor yourself. You remain unshaken in a world that's constantly reacting. And then there's self-compassion, which, for many of us, is even harder. We tend to hold ourselves to impossible standards. We forgive others quickly, but crucify ourselves for the same mistakes. We speak gently to our friends while berating ourselves in silence. But practicing self-compassion means looking in the mirror and seeing yourself with the same grace you offer others. It means acknowledging your flaws without letting them define you. It means remembering growth is never tidy, progress is never perfect. Seneca said, "No man becomes great all at once. Growth is a process, mastery is a journey. And on that journey, you will falter, you will lose your temper, you will act from fear, you will fail to live up to your own ideals. But compassion whispers, that's okay. Let's learn something here. Let's take this misstep and move forward wiser, stronger." And let's be clear, compassion isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's the opposite. True compassion is built on accountability. It says, yes, I made a mistake, and yes, I own it. But I will not chain myself to it. I will grow. I will keep going. That mindset transforms failure into something sacred, not an end, but a threshold, a doorway to deeper wisdom. So practice compassion for others. Practice it for yourself, over and over again, because a mind trained in empathy and compassion becomes something rare, something both sharp and soft, a mind that doesn't just survive the storms, but knows how to bring shelter to others along the way. Empathy and compassion, when practiced sincerely, soften the sharp edges of life. They turn pain into understanding and turn wounds into wisdom. But to truly grow, we must take one more powerful step: full responsibility for our inner world. True strength is not rigid, it's flexible. It's sharp enough to see through illusion, yet soft enough to respond with wisdom and grace. This balance protects your heart from growing cold. It keeps bitterness from taking root. Even when the world offers you every reason to shut down, empathy gives you patience with others. Compassion gives you patience with yourself. Together, they shape emotional maturity, not the kind measured by how hard you hit back, but by how calmly, clearly, and intentionally you move forward every day. Life gives you 1,000 invitations to practice. A colleague snaps at you. A stranger cuts you off in traffic. A friend disappoints you. Your own inner voice shames you for falling short. In every one of these moments, you face a choice. Do you react blindly or respond consciously? Do you harden your heart or keep it open? Do you drown in judgment or rise in understanding? It won't always be easy, but the power to choose remains yours. And every single time you choose compassion over criticism, empathy over anger, patience over blame, you grow stronger. Not in the brittle, defensive way of someone untouched by life, but in the deep, steady way of someone who refuses to be broken by it. So keep choosing, keep softening, keep growing, and soon you'll notice the world around you starts to shift, quietly, powerfully. Now we turn to one of the most liberating and difficult truths of all: taking full responsibility for your reactions. There exists an invisible line between what happens to you and how you respond to it. Some people never cross that line. They spend their lives blaming others, blaming events, mistakes, bad luck, cruel words, as if their emotions were not their own, but strings pulled by outside hands. But real freedom, the kind no one can take from you, begins the moment you accept this radical truth. You are responsible for your reactions, not for what life throws your way, not for what others say or do, but for the meaning you assign to it, the story you tell yourself, the next action you choose. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus put it simply: we are not disturbed by events, but by the views we take of them. He wasn't denying that pain exists. He was saying that pain doesn't have to dictate your peace. Taking responsibility isn't about blame. It's not about punishing yourself every time you get upset or overwhelmed. It's about ownership. It's the quiet, powerful act of saying, my inner peace is mine to protect. My growth is mine to cultivate. No one else can do it for me. Because when you don't take responsibility, you surrender your inner life to the world. A rude comment ruins your day. A rejection ruins your self-worth. A mistake ruins your confidence. But when you reclaim that responsibility, you reclaim your power. You start living from the inside out, not from the outside in. This shift isn't easy. It isn't instant. It requires honesty. It requires the strength to stop waiting for apologies that may never come. It asks you to stop waiting for better circumstances before you decide to be calm and centered. And it demands, most of all, that you let go of the comfort of excuses. Because let's be honest, blaming others is comfortable, isn't it? It spares you the pain of change. It lets you stay the same and call it survival. But growth asks more. It asks for ownership. It asks for courage. And it asks you to stand in your own life, fully, flaws, failures, and all, and say, this is mine, and I choose how to move forward. Taking full responsibility for your reactions is the first step toward emotional sovereignty. But that responsibility comes with an invitation, a quiet, persistent call to look inward, not just at what you do, but at what you carry. There's a silent weight many of us carry, everyday one. We don't even realize is there. It tightens the chest, clouds the mind, hardens the heart, and its source is not what others have done to us, but what we refuse to release: our ego, our pride, our grudges. We often mistake strength for stubbornness. We're taught that holding on, digging in, never backing down, that's what it means to be strong. But what if true strength is the opposite? What if the bravest thing you can do is let go? Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing the unnecessary weights that no longer serve your growth. It means choosing freedom over friction, peace over pride. The ego is a relentless voice. It tells you that you must be right, no matter the cost, that every slight is a personal attack, that losing face is a fate worse than death. Pride adds fuel to the fire. It says that forgiveness is weakness, that moving on without revenge is surrender, that if you don't stand your ground even when it's toxic, you'll be seen as soft, as defeated. And grudges are seductive. They tell you that holding onto the pain will protect you, that if you let go, you're letting someone off the hook. But here's the truth. That pain you're holding onto, it's not protecting you. It's poisoning you. Grudges don't hurt those who wronged you. They hurt you. They keep old wounds fresh. They keep your nervous system in a constant state of defense. They chain you to the very thing you wish you could escape. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't teach us to avoid conflict or injustice. They taught us to discern what is within our control and to release what is not. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been." That's not denial. That's liberation. Releasing ego doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means no longer needing to prove them to everyone. It means being rooted in your truth without forcing others to validate it. Releasing pride doesn't mean becoming passive. It means recognizing that your dignity doesn't depend on someone else's apology or your ability to win the argument. Releasing grudges doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer reliving the pain as if it were still happening. It means setting yourself free. Ask yourself, what am I still carrying that no longer serves me? Is this anger helping me grow or keeping me stuck? Am I defending my peace or just defending my pride? To release the weight is not to lose something, it's to gain something far more valuable. Clarity, lightness, space for new thoughts, new connections, new energy to flow. And just like all things in this journey, this too is a practice. One breath, one release, one moment at a time. You'll find that as the weight lifts, your life does too. You'll walk taller not because you're carrying more, but because you've chosen to carry less. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is mastery. Letting go of ego, pride, and grudges doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. And freedom, true, lasting freedom, requires emotional clarity and the courage to release what weighs you down. Sometimes we hold anger close like armor, believing it shields us from being hurt again. But the Stoics, in their timeless wisdom, saw the truth more clearly. They understood that clinging to offense, to pride, to the craving for vindication doesn't protect us, it imprisons us. It keeps us tied to the very pain we claim to despise. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself a disarming question. Will you be angry with the world, as if the world would notice? That simple reflection cuts to the core. Anger doesn't punish the world. Bitterness doesn't hurt those who've wronged us. As the Stoics knew, Carrying resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. Releasing ego isn't about shrinking yourself. It's not about thinking less of who you are. It's about needing less from the world to affirm that you matter. When your ego becomes quiet, something profound happens. You stop collapsing under criticism. You stop needing to dominate conversations just to be heard. You stop fearing the feeling of being wrong, because your worth is no longer built on the shaky pedestal of always being right. And what about pride? Letting go of pride doesn't mean becoming passive or giving in. It means choosing dignity over domination. Pride screams, "I must win." Dignity simply asks, "Can I act with honor?" When you release pride, you gain the ability to apologize sincerely, to forgive without bitterness, and to walk away from conflicts that would otherwise devour your peace. You learn to disagree without despising. You can correct someone without humiliating them. You can lead with strength without the need to stand taller than everyone else. Now, releasing grudges, that's often the hardest part, isn't it? Grudges feel righteous. They feel earned. They whisper that by remembering the hurt, we're protecting ourselves. But the truth, grudges keep us stuck. We replay the moment of pain like a broken record. And in doing so, we grant the people who wounded us permanent residence in our minds long after they've moved on. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about forgetting. It's not about excusing harm. It's about refusing to let past injury determine your future. It's the choice to be free, even when others have not been fair. Seneca said it simply, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Healing doesn't come from mirroring the harm done to you. It comes from breaking the cycle, from choosing peace over prolonged war. This isn't a what-I'm epiphany. It's a discipline, a daily, even hourly decision. When criticism stings, pause, breathe, remind yourself, I am more than this moment. When pride tempts you to dig in your heels, ask yourself gently, what matters more, being right or being wise? When resentment rises like fire, soften, whisper, I choose not to carry this flame any longer. And over time, something extraordinary unfolds. The mind grows lighter, the heart quieter. You start moving through life with less armor but greater resilience. Not because you're untouched, but because you've chosen not to be hardened. You stop being weighed down by every insult, every misunderstanding, every slight. You learn to walk away with clarity, to forgive with strength, and to remain true to yourself in the face of conflict. Just imagine a life where you're not dragging yesterday's chains behind you. A life where ego no longer demands constant defense. Where apologizing feels natural and forgiveness feels freeing. Where peace isn't something you chase but something you become. That isn't weakness. It isn't naive. That is strength. Releasing pride, ego, and grudges clears the path for something far more valuable, your inner peace. And to protect that peace, we must learn one more essential practice, setting boundaries with clarity and courage. There's a quiet, unmistakable power in recognizing where you end and where others begin. In today's world, a world that often glorifies hustle, self-sacrifice, and always being available, drawing boundaries can feel wrong, even selfish. But boundaries aren't barriers. They're not walls built to keep people out. They are the invisible lines that define respect, preserve your well-being, and allow space for authentic connection. Healthy boundaries are not acts of rebellion. They are declarations of self-respect. They whisper, without hostility, this is what I need to stay well. This is what I cannot accept. This is the line I must draw if I want to live honestly. Without those lines, even the most loving relationships can slowly turn bitter decaying into exhaustion, silent resentment, and quiet imbalance. The Stoics, though they may not have used the modern term boundaries, understood the principle well. Marcus Aurelius fiercely guarded his inner life against the distractions of court, the corruption of flattery, the chaos of opinion. He reminded himself often the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think, or do only what you do. This was boundary setting in its most philosophical form. But how do you set boundaries in real life? It starts with deep self-awareness. You must ask yourself, what drains me? What nourishes me? What can I give without resentment? What must I protect if I want to stay whole? Without this inner clarity, you'll find yourself saying yes out of guilt, people-pleasing out of fear, and burning out without understanding why. Once you know your limits, the next step is communication. Clear, calm, direct. No over-explaining. No apology for needing space or honoring your needs. A boundary doesn't have to sound harsh to be firm. It might be, thanks for the invite, but I need this evening for myself. Or, I'm not available for that right now. Or even, I value our relationship, and to keep it healthy, I need us to align on certain expectations. The language of boundaries is simple. The real challenge lies in your willingness to speak it and your strength to hold it when tested. And make no mistake, it will be tested. Some people won't like your boundaries, especially if they were benefiting from your lack of them. They may guilt you, question you, push back, but that is their right. And it is your right and your responsibility to remain steady. No anger, no guilt, no dramatic explanations, just truth. Seneca once said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Boundaries are how you ensure that your relationships nourish rather than drain you. They protect the sacred space where growth, love, and dignity can thrive. Clear communication is not cruelty. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. The strongest boundaries are often spoken in the softest tones. They don't attack, they affirm. They don't reject, they protect. They say, this is my path. I walk it openly, but I choose carefully who and what walks beside me. And through the daily practice of honoring your limits, something powerful emerges. You begin to understand that peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of clarity. You learn that every time you say no to what wounds you, you say yes to what heals you. That is strength. That is self-respect in action. So, set your boundaries, speak your truth, and watch how your world begins to change, not because others behave differently, but because you finally do. Setting clear boundaries isn't just about protecting your peace, it's also about choosing what nourishes you. And the most crucial part, honoring the promises you make to yourself. We often think of boundaries as lines we draw for others, but the deeper truth is this. The first boundary you must protect is the one you set with yourself. It's not enough to say, I won't answer work emails after 7 p.m. if you're still checking your inbox at midnight. It's not enough to tell yourself, I need rest, if guilt keeps you tethered to your to-do list. Each time you quietly break your own rules, a subtle message is sent. You can't be trusted to protect your own needs. And if you don't take your boundaries seriously, why would anyone else? Every small act of self-betrayal chips away at the foundation of self-trust. Each time you override your needs to avoid discomfort, to gain approval, or to silence guilt, you teach the world and yourself that your well-being is negotiable. But when you honor your own word, when you treat your limits as sacred, something powerful happens. You begin to walk differently, speak differently. Others feel it too. They start to respect what you model, not just what you say. True boundaries aren't drawn in anger. They're rooted in love. Love for yourself and for those you interact with. Why? Because healthy boundaries set expectations clearly. They remove the guesswork. They prevent the slow-burning resentment that comes from unmet, unspoken needs. They create a space for honesty, for mutual understanding, for trust that doesn't wear thin. Of course, it's not always easy. There will be moments when you feel the urge to bend your limits to keep the peace, to avoid awkwardness, to be liked. And in those moments, a quiet choice stands before you. Betray your peace or stand in your truth. Every time you choose to hold your boundary, even if your voice shakes, you strengthen your core. You affirm to yourself, I matter. My energy is worth protecting. My well-being is not up for negotiation. This is not about shutting others out. It's about showing up for your life with clarity. It's about replacing silent sacrifice with conscious connection. Because when you respect your own needs, your relationships shift from obligation to authenticity. So say what you mean. Communicate your needs calmly. Hold your ground without guilt. And notice how the air around you changes when you live this way. Something subtle but powerful begins to unfold. Life gets lighter, cleaner, freer. Once we begin protecting our peace by honoring our own boundaries, the next challenge often appears silently and unexpectedly. Stress and anxiety. They knock at the door when life feels too full, too fast, or too uncertain. Stress and anxiety are not personal failures. They're natural signals, your mind and body alerting you that something feels off, unsafe, or out of control. But while these feelings are real, they do not have to rule you. Managing stress isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about learning how to respond with presence, clarity, and strength. Even when your inner world feels chaotic, that's where tools come in, not glamorous, not instant, but powerful in their quiet consistency. Let's begin with the thoughts themselves. Anxiety often thrives on unchallenged assumptions. So when you feel fear rising, pause and ask yourself, is this fear true? Is it certain? Is it even helpful? Most fears collapse under the weight of honest questions. Reframing, in this sense, is not about denial. It's about deliberately choosing a perspective that gives you power instead of paralysis. And when the mind feels too crowded to make sense of anything, right? Journaling doesn't need to be poetic. Let it be messy. Let the chaos pour onto the page. What feels monstrous in the mind often shrinks when you see it clearly written down. Journaling makes the vague become visible. And once visible, it becomes something you can name, understand, and eventually soothe. Another essential tool often forgotten is simplicity. Stress is magnified by excess. Too many demands, too many deadlines, too many voices pulling you in every direction. Simplicity brings you back. Ask yourself, what truly matters today? Focus there. Let go of solving everything at once. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And it's true when life feels overwhelming. It's usually the complexity that's spinning, not the moment itself. Of course, one of the most courageous tools is also the hardest to reach for. Asking for help. Yes, the Stoics valued self-reliance, but they also believed in the strength of shared wisdom. Seneca exchanged letters with trusted friends. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders inspired by others. Seeking support from a friend a mentor, a therapist is not weakness. It's wisdom. You don't have to carry every burden alone. And then there's acceptance. Accept that stress will come and go, just like changing weather. The more you fight it, the more it fights back. But if you can say, here it is again, with calm awareness, you rob it of much of its force. You become a steady witness, rather than a helpless victim. These tools, breath, movement, thought reframing, simplicity, support, acceptance, they are practices, not performances. Some days they'll work beautifully, other days anxiety may still rise. That's not failure. That's being human. Mastery isn't about eliminating stress. It's about building the strength to return to center, over and over again. No matter how many times you get pulled away. So begin now. Make deep breathing part of your morning. Move your body every day, even a short walk counts. Let reflection anchor your evenings. Simplify your focus. Journal freely. Ask for help when needed. Accept what is real without resistance. Over time, you'll notice a quiet shift. You'll feel less like you're being tossed by every wave and more like a grounded sailor who, while never able to calm the sea, has learned to steer with grace. As we build resilience through practical tools, we also arrive at one of the most crucial truths on the path of self-mastery. We do not grow by becoming perfect, we grow by embracing our imperfections. With compassion, most of us carry around an invisible image of the person we believe we should become: flawless, polished, disciplined, always composed. We imagine that once we achieve this perfect version of ourselves, then finally we will be worthy of peace, success, and self-respect. But that vision, it's a mirage, a moving target that only grows more distant the more we chase it. The truth is simple, but profound. Perfection is not the destination of growth, it's the enemy of it. To embrace imperfection does not mean you stop striving for excellence. It means you stop believing that you must become flawless before you are allowed to rest, to feel proud, or to treat yourself with kindness. Your flaws are not signs of failure. They are the fingerprints of your humanity. The Stoics reminded us of this in subtle yet powerful ways. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor burdened with unimaginable responsibilities, still wrote in his private journals about his frustrations, his flashes of anger, his moments of weakness. He didn't deny them. He faced them with honesty, with patience, and with the quiet determination to keep growing. He never claimed to be perfect, only committed. Likewise, self-compassion is not a license to avoid accountability. It's the courageous decision to meet yourself exactly where you are, with truth, with kindness, and with a willingness to continue. When you stumble and you will, self-compassion doesn't say it doesn't matter. It says, of course, I stumbled. I'm human. But this moment doesn't define me. When you fall short of your ideals, it says, I see the gap between who I am and who I want to be, and I will keep walking toward that. When you fail, it whispers gently. This is a chapter in the story, not the end of the book. Without self-compassion, every misstep becomes a scar. Every imperfection turns into a harsh verdict. The inner voice grows loud and cruel. Why can't I do better? What's wrong with me? Will I ever be enough? And under that weight, growth shrinks, courage retreats. The risk of trying again feels too painful to bear. But compassion changes that. It transforms mistakes from punishments into teachers. It allows you to hold your flaws with curiosity rather than condemnation. It invites you to ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? Seneca once wrote, while we teach, we learn. In the same way, while we fail, we grow if we are willing to meet ourselves with patience instead of punishment. And make no mistake, self-compassion is a practice. It won't come naturally, especially if you've been taught that self-criticism is the price of growth. You'll need to train your mind to hear the voice of compassion over the noise of harshness. It starts in small, ordinary moments when you forget something important. Instead of berating yourself, you say, "I'm handling a lot. It's okay to forget. I'll build a better system next time," when anxiety takes over. Instead of labeling yourself weak, you say, "I'm under pressure. I deserve care, not shame." When you lose your temper, instead of collapsing in guilt, you say, "That wasn't the best version of me, but I see it, and I'll do better tomorrow." Each of these gentle responses rewires your inner world. They send a powerful message. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to fall and rise again. You are safe to evolve. And as you embrace your own imperfection, something begins to shift in your relationships too. You become less rigid with others, more understanding. You stop expecting them to be perfect. You create space for mistakes, for misunderstandings, for the beautiful mess of human growth. This doesn't mean you abandon standards. It means your standards are no longer fueled by fear, but by love. Love for who you are and for who others are becoming. Once you stop chasing perfection and begin embracing your imperfect self with compassion, something profound happens. The pressure to arrive fades and the space to grow truly opens. Excellence, in its truest form, does not come from fear, not from avoiding mistakes or hiding flaws, but from the freedom to try, to stumble, and to rise again with intention. When you embrace your imperfections fully, you also embrace your humanity in all its richness, complex, evolving, and beautifully unfinished. You stop demanding perfection from yourself and instead start pursuing wholeness. That one shift changes everything. It releases the heavy burden of always needing to get it right. It gives you back your breath, your room to try, to fail, and to grow, not behind a mask, but out in the open, in the honest light of authenticity. The cracks in your armor don't disappear. The scars, the rough edges, they remain. But they stop being symbols of shame and become testaments of resilience. Proof that you've lived, you've learned, and you're still becoming. So yes, embrace your imperfections. Practice compassion toward yourself, not a passive softness, but a fierce, steady, unwavering kindness. And through that, you'll uncover a strength that was never born from being flawless, but from being real, from being whole. This mindset leads us to the next layer of emotional mastery, developing a growth mindset. And cultivating emotional balance. To grow is not optional, it is essential to being fully alive. To believe in growth is to believe that who you are right now is only the starting point of who you can become. This belief is the foundation of resilience, of purpose, of mastery. It's what helps us stretch rather than shrink in the face of adversity. But make no mistake, a growth mindset isn't just some abstract ideal. It's a way of meeting life. It's how you look at a setback and say, "I'm not done." It's how you look at a mistake and say, "This taught me something." It's how you face your limitations and choose to lean in, not give up. The Stoics understood this deeply. Their goal wasn't to become unshakable statues, unaffected by the world. It was to become adaptable, to meet reality as it is, and to respond with integrity. Life wasn't going to be easy, and they never expected it to be. but they believed in becoming the kind of person who could stand in the middle of chaos with steady hands and a clear mind. Developing a growth mindset means reframing the way you interpret struggle. It means choosing to see failure not as a verdict of inadequacy, but as evidence of effort, as a lesson in progress. Every obstacle becomes an invitation. Every hardship asks, "What is this here to teach me? How can I become wiser, stronger, deeper because of this?" And out of this mindset, emotional balance begins to take root. What is emotional balance, really? It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about learning to feel them without being consumed by them. It's the ability to sit with grief without drowning in despair, to feel anger without lashing out, to experience fear without freezing. It's the quiet power to return to center over and over again, no matter how far life pulls you away. Picture two trees caught in the same storm. One stands tall, but rigid, resisting every gust of wind. The other bends and sways, but never snaps. Which one survives? The flexible one, because it doesn't fight reality, it flows with it. This is emotional balance, not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to break. A growth mindset teaches you to expect imperfection not as an excuse, but as a natural truth. It helps you meet your emotions with curiosity instead of fear. When anger rises, you ask, "What boundary is being crossed?" When sadness lingers, you ask, "What loss am I grieving? How can I honor it without letting it consume me?" When fear whispers, you ask, "What risk am I afraid to take? And what does that say about what I truly care about?" Emotional balance does not ask you to stop feeling. It asks you to feel wisely, to witness your emotional storms without losing yourself inside them. As we develop a growth mindset and emotional balance, we begin to see life not as something that happens to us, but as something we are constantly shaping through presence, perspective, and practice. Emotional balance does not mean apathy. It doesn't mean shutting down or becoming cold. It means presence. It means staying with yourself fully, honestly, through every wave of emotion, without needing to run, suppress, or exaggerate what you feel. It is the calm, steady recognition, "I am feeling this, and I can handle it." Marcus Aurelius, a man surrounded by war, betrayal, and plagues, reminded himself of this daily. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. In those few words lies the heart of emotional self-mastery, the realization that while the world may be stormy, the sky within can remain clear. The moment you remember your power to reframe, to respond, to return to center, you reclaim control over the only thing that has ever been truly yours, your inner life. To cultivate a growth mindset and emotional balance is not a one-time decision. It's not something you do only when things feel easy. It is a daily discipline, a quiet commitment. You choose to celebrate effort more than outcome. You forgive yourself not to excuse laziness, but to make space for perseverance. You shift your focus from proving something to learning something. You begin to find value not just in achievement, but in the attempt. It takes humility, the kind of humility that lets you admit, "I will never be finished. I will always be learning. I am always becoming." And it takes courage, the courage to show up, to fail, to feel, and to keep going anyway. Because let's be honest, growth is messy. Balance isn't static, it shifts every day. There will be times you stumble, days you fall, but each time you rise again, each time you meet yourself with honesty and try anyway. You strengthen the muscles of emotional resilience. Over time, something subtle yet profound happens. The voice that whispers you're not enough starts to fade. The fear of imperfection begins to loosen its grip. You stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "How can I grow?" You stop fearing failure and begin respecting it as one of your greatest teachers. You stop trying to control everything around you and begin learning how to meet life as it comes with grace, with strength, with clarity. Mastering your emotions is not about becoming untouchable. It's not about building walls so high that nothing can hurt you. It's about standing firmly, vulnerably, at the center of your being open, strong, and awake. It's about noticing the first flicker of anger before it becomes a fire. It's about hearing fears whisper and choosing not to let it lead. It's about meeting sadness, pride, anxiety not as enemies, but as messengers asking to be heard, not obeyed. When you understand your emotional triggers, when you listen to your body's signals, when you create even a small pause before reacting, you are stepping into a kind of freedom the world cannot give you. A freedom you must build, moment by moment, from within. This is the power of mindfulness, not as a performance, but as a presence in the ordinary. This is what happens when you stop avoiding your inner world and start witnessing it. You begin to label and accept your emotions with clarity and compassion. You stop being ruled by your thoughts and start reshaping them with awareness. You practice empathy for others and, just as importantly, for yourself. You take full responsibility for your reactions, not because it's easy, but because it's the only path to inner peace. And in doing so, you stop blaming the world for the weather inside your soul. You become the calm in the storm, not because the storm is gone, but because you've learned how to stand steady through it. After all, true emotional mastery is not about suppressing your feelings, it's about meeting them with wisdom and choosing again and again to respond from your center rather than your wounds. And so, step by step, you've been learning to master the only thing truly within your control, your own mind. You've been releasing the heavy weights that were never yours to carry, the ego that demands, the pride that divides, the grudges that drain. These silent burdens, these thieves of peace, lose their power the moment you choose to let go. You've learned to set boundaries with clarity and calm, to speak your truth with quiet confidence, no anger, no apology. You've begun managing the inevitable tides of stress and anxiety, not by denying them, not by battling the waves, but by becoming a steadier sailor, by mastering the vessel that carries you through life's storms. And most importantly, you've chosen to embrace yourself, not as a project to perfect, but as a work in beautiful, imperfect progress. You are walking this path not because it is easy or tidy or clear, but because it is true. You are choosing growth over comfort, resilience over rigidity, and presence over panic. And isn't that what real strength looks like? This journey, your journey, is not linear. It's not finished today. It won't be finished tomorrow. It is a lifelong unfolding, a daily return to yourself, a quiet decision made over and over to find peace not in the chaos around you, but in the calm you choose within. So, if you take just one truth with you from this moment, let it be this: you do not need to be perfect to be powerful. You do not need to be fearless to be free. You only need to be willing to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to choose wisely, even if only a little better than yesterday. Master yourself gently, forgive yourself fiercely, walk with steadiness, messy, honest, human steadiness, and trust this truth: every pause you take, Every breath you reclaim, every act of compassion toward others, toward yourself is building something quiet, something solid, something unshakable. A life not dictated by storms, but guided by strength, a strength that doesn't shout, but endures. If this journey stirred something inside you, something real, something raw, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and continue walking this path with me. Every small step matters. Every step counts. Until next time, stay present, stay grounded, and never stop choosing the strength within you.